So for step 12, the front suspension, well, you can see that it's actually pretty involved because we're going to take the front uprights that we built in the previous step, and they have to be attached to both the top and the bottom of the front arms. And you can see that they're attached by 3 little screws and one of these screws, the flatheads, which I've got right there. But I mean, there's a lot of little screws with this one, and the ball connectors, our bearings, and then our axles. And then, of course, here are the couple of pieces. So there's 4 of those, and then obviously working with the uprights as well. So we're going to need to do all of this, but I think what we'll first do is we'll put the arms on before we deal with the axles. And the other thing is, up here, if you remember, I didn't put grease on them. I waited for here because that way, once they're in place, then we can, or as I'm building it, we can grease those up. So I'll set this up and we'll put it together. So first off, let's grab the top arm on this side. So you can see there's the pointy end and this hole where the ball connector is going to go. So let's get the ball connector in place. So we need to make sure that that's going in pretty level. Which it seems to be. Slightly off, that's okay. We'll bend it a bit, make sure that's going in straight. There we go. And once it gets to the end, you'll know. There we go. So there's the ball connector in place, which would probably be for actually, I'm not sure. I think that might be, it might be for the shock, or it might be for the, what is it, the stabilizer bar, but I guess we'll see. But anyways, that is in place. And now it's a matter of attaching this. Now you can see how this is going to sit. And that has to sit on top, and it's going to be screwed in with all of these little screws. But because I waited for this step to grease it, I'm going to put in a little bit of grease now first. So let's put a bit of grease in on here. And put a bit of grease in there. Move it around. There we go. So now that this is all greased up, you need to make sure that this plastic piece is aligned with the holes in the metal underneath. Then when you grab this piece here and put that on, you need to make sure that the holes again are once aligned so that the little ones are going to be able to go in there, and make sure that the metal hole at the bottom is aligned with the top, because that's where we're going to put in our flat-headed screw. So I'm going to just screw this in a bit. Got to grab the right one. And it's moved, so you got to be careful on that. So let's screw that in. Then make sure that those holes are okay and aligned, which it looks like they are. So now we've got the little screws that have to make their way all the way through, and we're going to screw those into the metal piece that was protruding. And that's why you need the metal protrusion pointing down, because that is what the screw is going to screw itself into. So we need 3 of those. And because they're tiny screws, you know, definitely screw this all the way in, but don't over tighten. So I'm just going to go around again, making sure that it's all going in okay, which it has. And I'll do one last turn of that. Yep. So there we go. There is the top arm. And I have to say, that is actually super, super smooth. Like, that makes the front suspension really, really free. Very cool. So now we need to do the same thing on the bottom. So what we're going to do, same thing. I'm going to grease up the ball once again. And put a bit underneath. There we go. And then again, we need to make sure that those holes are aligned. But the difference is, on the bottom, we need to grab this piece right here so that it is facing up. And that's going to face this way. So this needs to sit on top like that. And again, we need to make sure that hole is aligned. So I'll grab that flathead screw, put that in, and screw that down. It does like to move on the other side, but that is in. So essentially it's looking like that from the top. So I'm going to go back to this. We know that we need to screw in these little ones, put the little guys in place. And another one. My hands are getting all slippery because of the grease. And last one. Okay, so now I'm going to tighten them up just a bit. There we go. And one last turn of this one. And there we go. So now we've got complete free movement, both the top and the bottom, and it feels really, really good. So ultimately, this is what it should look like when it's finished. So that one is done. So let's do the other side now. So we need to grab our ball connector, and once again, we need to get that inside of that hole. Kind of check it out, make sure that it's going in level. It sort of is, but it needs to move a little bit. Yeah, there we go. So now we can screw this right in. And once it reaches the end, you can stop. There we go. So there's our ball connector in place. So same sort of scenario here. So we need to have this sitting down with the ball connector down. We need to grease this up. So I'm going to grease up the top one that we're going to work with first. And then on the other side. might squeeze just a touch more in there. But there we go. So now, got to make sure that those holes are open to the holes below, as you can see. Then we're going to grab this one, and it's got to sit over top. And I always think it's not correct, because it's not. You see how those holes, it looks right, but the positioning has to be absolutely bang on. See how if I move this over here, you think, okay, well, it's open to the holes, but the alignment of this one when you fit it over top is not correct. So you've got to turn it until it is correct, like that, so that when this goes on, those holes are open to the bottom, which means that we can now put our flathead screwdriver, or screw, into the metal underneath and screw that in. And I'm not tightening it up too much yet, because what I want to make sure of is that the holes are open, which they are. So now we can grab each one of these small ones and screw them in. And again, because these screws are so small, you do not want to over tighten these, because you'll end up stripping them out. And get this last one in there. And there we go. So I'm just doing an extra little turn, make sure that they're all in, but I'm not going to over tighten. And with this one, I'm just going to do a final check with that. It's fine. So there we go. There is the top portion finished again. So let's work on the other side. So again, I'm going to grease up the ball connector. And do the same thing on the other side. Keep everything lubed, yes. So, same thing. So with this one, when this was sitting down like this needs to be facing that way. And that has to now sit like that. Now what I want to check for is to make sure that the holes on the bottom are open, and they're not. So what does that mean? It means that we have to move this around so that it is in alignment. Now you can see that it is, and the holes are visible. So now that that's in place, we're going to make sure that this is attaching itself to the metal underneath. We'll screw this in. And I'm not over tightening, but I just want to make sure that it actually has gone in. And now you can see that the holes are open. So we'll stick the first one in and screw that in place. Next one. Screw that in place. And the next one, and we'll screw that one in place. Okay. So I'm just going to go around, make sure that these are screwed in okay. Yes. And make sure this one is in okay. Yep. So there we go. There is the top and bottom again on the other side. Now, normally I would do one and then just let you do the other one, but this seems like a very involved step, and you do need to make sure that the placement of this is correct for this to go on properly. So knowing that both sides are finished, we have that one last thing that we need to do, which is we need to put the bearings into the hubs. So let's do that. And the other bearing goes inside down here. Now this is a bit more difficult to push in, so I'm going to grab, I don't know if I'll grab one of these, which is actually like a box wrench, but it's bigger. I can put my whole, the whole edge of this round piece down at the bottom to push it in to make sure that it's going in nice and flat. So once that is in, we can then take our drive axle, and again, I'm not going to lube it because we've got the ball bearings. I'm going to slide that through and slide the pin through the axle, just like that. So there we go. So there's one. And so same thing again on the other side. So again, we'll grab a bearing, put that into this side. This one seems a little tougher to go in. There we go. It's in place. And we'll put the other one down at the bottom. And again, I'm going to grab my, I guess, box wrench screwdriver, you could call it. Push that into place, just like that. And again, going to put our drive axle in there and use the pin to lock it in place. So there we go. There is our left and right front suspension finished. So step 12 is done. So now we're going to move on to step 13 and attach the front suspension.